You have in a narcissist a person who's willing to do whatever it takes to make money. They will burn bridges, hurt colleagues, betray friends and family, lie, cheat, ignore rules, rationalize shady choices, and power to the front of the line. So let's talk about get-rich schemes in narcissistic people. This could be a very short video. Basically, narcissistic people love get-rich schemes. The quicker the better. They love them. This isn't a shocker. Let's talk about the whys and then talk about why this matters to you if this is happening in your world. Narcissistic people are very naturally drawn to get rich schemes for a variety of reasons. Grandiosity, entitlement. They sort of feel entitled that they shouldn't have to work for someone else, that they shouldn't have to get up in the morning and go do a job that they don't want to do, that they deserve it, that they deserve just to get rich. Get arrogance. People believe they're smarter than everyone else and can get rich quickly. And since this grandiosity and entitlement can almost veer into a delusional place, they really believe it. Grandiosity is a funny thing. In fact, one of the diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality disorder in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, the DSM, is that the narcissistic person lives in fantasies of unlimited wealth and importance and love. And those fantasies can often ground them in these get-rich-quick-scheme fantasies. Narcissistic people are also very suggestible. And while historically narcissistic people have always been attracted to get-rich-quick schemes, with the advent of social media and looking at the manufactured stories of other people's successes and schemes and seeing folks in those ubiquitous social media images of private jets and designer goods and growing crypto balances, it's enough to fuel their entitled belief that they are next. I mean, there is a grifter element right in the get-rich-scheme world on both sides. On one side, you have the folks who are running the grift, though this group tends to be more straight-up malignant, narcissistic, dark-terrored, maybe even psychopathic folks who may lure folks into their get-rich schemes, pyramid schemes, Ponzi schemes, right? They tell people to pony up a little bit of cash and trust them. And they may often plan on the enthusiasm of a suggestible and foolish and grandiose and arrogant, interestingly narcissistic person who get pulled in. Don't get me wrong, lots of sweet, innocent people get pulled in, but so do also a lot of narcissistic folks. And on the other side, you do have the narcissistic person who wants to believe in these schemes and actually believes that they're entitled to quick success, not noticing the news stories or not doing their due diligence or research, or noticing that rarely does this happen. But the entitlement can sort of block their ability to see that because they feel so entitled to get rich quickly. So the narcissistic person starts living in this fantasy world, and this is when it starts becoming your problem if you are close to them. First, if you have shared accounts with them, there is a risk that they may be dipping into your joint money or borrowing money from you, promising to pay you back right away and over time putting you in financial peril. And even the family finances may be part of the scheme. They may initially put the money they take out of savings, or the like they put it back right away. Initially soothing you so you believe that they aren't doing bad. Second, you have to live with the irritability because most of the time these get-rich schemes don't work. So when things do not go the way a narcissistic person wants and they don't make their instant $1 billion, one of the hallmarks of the narcissistic personality is poor frustration tolerance for anything that doesn't go the way that they want or that rains on their grandiosity parade. And then they may lash out at you, especially if you question what they are doing and evoke shame in them. And even if you're not in a relationship with them, trust me, they're going to try to suck you into their get-rich-quick scheme and make you an investor. Something I have commented about quite a bit on this channel is narcissism and the whole failure to launch phenomenon, the sort of getting stuck and stunted we often see in narcissistic folks. And while others are sliding into careers or work paths or adult stuff that pays the bills and becoming autonomous adults who do pay their own way, this process is often thwarted for narcissistic folks. It's not unusual, for example, for narcissistic people to be disdainful of higher education. Think saying things like, I know so much more than those stupid professors. And then if they do drop out of university, they might think that, well, they shouldn't have to train in a trade, or frankly, they just don't have the skills or capability to train in a trade. And then they'll say they don't want to work for a boss, or have a regular schedule because they like to be in control of their time all the time. All of this can combine to having no job, no steady income, and a lot of sitting and scrolling and looking for a quick path to riches so they too can retire at the age of 35. It is also not unusual for narcissistic people to get an idea along the lines of building a better mousetrap or reinventing the wheel. Get-rich schemes can have different faces. Some of it may be shady investments that promise very quick high yields, taking advantage of people and offering them shady investments. Putting money into an idea that they believe will pay out quickly, especially if that idea is floated by a friend whom they admire and may also feel a rivalry with. Buying a bunch of something. For example, trying the corn trying to corner the market on something like people did with like masks and hand sanitizer at the beginning of the pandemic, and then turning around and selling these items, these cornered market items for extortionate prices, taking money for an event that doesn't happen or is not what is advertised. But it could be other stuff. The get-rich schemer may take a vacation and think, oh, okay, I am such a good vacation taker. I should be a travel writer and do a travel blog, and I will make millions and get brand sponsorships for my amazing travel channel, and I'm going to travel the world for free. And all of this is going to be said on the basis of them having a nice vacation in Hawaii. They may mix together a coffee drink at home one morning and say, I am a genius. This needs to be bottled. I will make millions. They may wake up one day and say, I'm going to be a house flipper with little con knowledge of how financing, construction, and how all the rest of it works. Or they may buy a house after scanning listings on a real estate website and think, I can do all this real estate selling, and may even take the requisite exams and assume that they're going to amass millions selling real estate. Or they'll say, well, everyone tells me I'm gorgeous. I'm going to be a model. I mean, you get the idea, right? That they are somehow magical and that their ordinary observations or skills will result in overnight riches. Well, as you can guess, in most cases, this does not work out. I mean, heaven help us when it does. Listen, a broken clock is right twice a day, and a fool can win the lottery. Because when it does, you have a narcissistic person so emboldened that they can become downright dangerous. But in most cases, it doesn't work out. And then what? Narcissistic deflation. Narcissistic deflation is a sort of ego crash. And this can typically manifest as being even more angry and more contemptuous at the world. Life is so not fair to me. Other people have it so much easier than me. I am ahead of my time. This was a great idea, but people were too stupid to see it. Other people have rich people financing them. People are against me. And a sort of paranoid entitlement as though it is some grand plot that their get-rich scheme didn't go well for them, that it should have worked. You can see downright depression in some cases, a withdrawal from the world, a sort of irritable depression which can become very difficult for the people around them, or a lot of acting out. There may be a risk of them using drugs and alcohol to manage their dark moods. And as someone in a relationship with them, you may feel a mix of exhaustion, fear, pity, anxiety, and living in hypervigilance around their dark moods. And you might have also gotten caught on their whole get-rich roller coaster, just kind of hoping it would work out and maybe all of your financial problems would go away. But these get-rich schemes aren't just a dilettante. They can do real damage to the finances of families, either a family someone has made or a family of origin. For example, parents pouring money into the next scheme or other family members doing this. And this can have ripple effects through a system. And instead of being apologetic or taking accountability, the narcissistic person behind the get-rich-quick scheme who took the money may take more of a woe is me stance, instead of reflecting on the harm to others that their bad decisions resulted in. Not everyone who gets pulled into the allure of a get-rich-you scheme is narcissistic. Some of it is youthful, naive exuberance, the sort of adolescent entitlement that leads someone to think that it can be easy and that the 9 to F5 treadmill is decidedly unhip and uncool. Some of it is genuine naive at any age, not understanding what is being sold to them. But with narcissistic get-rich-quick schemes, it tends to be repetitive, and that this time they have it all figured out. It's like future faking, and keep in mind that traditional entrepreneurship doesn't fall under this. Being an entrepreneur is hard work, and the discipline and hoop jumping and far more than 9 to 5 hours and commitment that tends not to be a get-rich scheme. It's too laborious. By definition, get-rich schemes are too good to be true. Little work, but lots of payout. A sort of counting on good luck, which the narcissistic people feel entitled to, and there is an entitlement that cuts through all of this. Why should I have to pay my dues? Why should I have to learn about something? Why should I have to be so disciplined and make these sacrifices? With that belief, and coupled with the narcissistic pattern of needing quick and frequent rewards, the narcissistic personality, and in some ways their brain is wired for these get-rich-quick situations. And also remember that not all narcissistic folks are get-rich-quick types. In the get-rich-quick world, you can see a lot of narcissism and arrogance and entitlement. But many narcissistic folks don't fall down this rabbit hole. It can be exhausting and frustrating to be in the face of or get pulled in the sort of the current of one of these schemes. And if you're in a relationship with a narcissistic person where this is happening, you may be gaslighted and called a buzzkill and told that you don't believe in them when you question what these grand plans of theirs are. And you may relent in an attempt to support them. But over time, especially if you're having to be the adult and keep the lights on and the rent paid, the get-rich-quick schemes can feel like one more insult in this relationship. And as I said, many people in these relationships, a narcissistic person is so convincing at the reality of this that you actually for a moment entertain the reality of it. And for a moment you might think, well, maybe this is the answer. I've seen movies where this happens. Maybe this will happen. Maybe they will make this money and I can stop working at this dead-end job or can spend more time with the kids or we can get a bigger house. Like I said, far more often than not, it doesn't happen. And then you're again on this kind of wild ride with them, which kind of in some ways mirrors and parallels the trauma-bonded roller coaster ride that is the relationship. Listen, if it was easy, we'd all be doing it. So saying that the social climbing narcissist to me feels like a redundancy. All narcissistic people are social climbers. By definition, social status is a major motivator for them because it's conflated with all of that power, control, and domination stuff. But let's break down the different ways it can look because it can really cast a light on a very common theme in narcissistic relationships. Every narcissistic person, without exception, uses a relationship as some means to an end. It's not about the affiliation, the connection, or the love. It's about a means to an end. And that end is usually supply and social status. Status is a form of supply. Narcissistic folks are also chameleons who will tell stories and misrepresent themselves to get a seat at the table of people who have more social heft than them, more hip cred. In fact, if you are a fancy, shiny person, you have money or fame or high status or a fancy family, you are narcissism crack. You are what they want. And folks like you may be disproportionately preyed upon, interestingly, by narcissistic folks. In an intimate relationship, first of all, they may be social climbing. They may be using you as a tool of social climbing, right? It doesn't feel good to recognize that. It's like I said, if you have money, resources, credentials, a family with influence or power or some notoriety or resources, whatever it is, if you represent a step up for a narcissistic person in terms of status, it could even be your appearance. Then you may meet a narcissistic person and face one hell of a love bomb. The narcissistic person may do their homework ahead of time about you. We can do that quite easily now. Learn about you, what you're about, your place in the world. And yes, your social status will matter greatly in their pursuit of you. And while it doesn't feel good, remember, they aren't getting to know anyone they are in a relationship with. Social status or no, your social status is the quality they want to pursue. So it's not a you thing, it's how they pick people. This really plays out if the narcissistic person may not have a lot going for them, but they're very attractive, or they have some kind of hip cred, or they're just a really good liar and can sell a pretty fancy, compelling story about themselves. That's really not entirely true. Or you may just be a nice person who saw something that you liked about them because they're so good at selling a story and then you get into a relationship with them. They're so manipulative that they may even play on how they really just wanted to get to know you as a person, and they see deeper than the superficial status stuff that other people must be trying to take advantage of. When a narcissistic person gets into a relationship with someone who will improve or lift their social status, your narcissistic supply becomes rocket fuel because it carries with it so much other stuff that they get for the sort of the price of just one relationship. But after a while, your relationship will go south in a terrible way. It always does, right? Because when the narcissistic person gets into a relationship with someone that they're using to social climb or to get an improvement in social status or even financial status, the narcissistic person is also, they're so insecure and they're constantly kind of on edge. So their shame is always right at the surface, right? Their rejection sensitivity, their hypersensitivity all around, it's right there. They overperceive every slight, every critique. They know at some level they're punching above their weight class, and they want to climb up in the ranks, and they want to be seen as the one with social status independent of you. In these types of social status climbing relationships, the narcissistic person may be in a rush to get a ring on it or get married, as that would imply a more concrete connection in a relationship, and that through marriage they would then have the status themselves. They will very quickly take on all the characteristics and identity of the status they are climbing to. Spending money that they may not have going into debt, or spending your money to get cars or clothes. They might start dressing in a certain way, doing things associated with that higher social status. And this may not happen only within an intimate relationship. Narcissistic people are social climbers, plain and simple. They may seek out fancy friends. They may even endure humiliating treatment by those higher status friends just to be close to the action. They may try to social climb through their jobs, hang out at places, I guess the types of places where wealthy people congregate. That might be certain kinds of restaurants, clubs, resorts, private clubs, and they may attempt to get these expensive memberships to these private clubs repeatedly, anything to put them in proximity to lots of people with higher social status. They will talk about famous people they met one time, or rich people, or high status people, as though they are friends or business contacts. They will be assertive and even aggressive in courting business and social contacts. For example, their kid may go to school with the kid of a person they want to meet or do business with, and they'll try to use their own poor kid as a playdate pawn to get closer to the fancy parent. Trust you me, I grew up in LA, and I saw that dance happen many, many times here within families. You may have also witnessed this. A narcissistic parent, for example, wanting higher social status, perhaps even being dismissive of your other parent, who wasn't making that life happen for them, right? Couldn't keep up with the Joneses, the proverbial Jones, or desperate to belong to whatever social groups existing, whatever those social groups were when you were a kid growing up, so they could move socially up. They may have been the parent. You might have had a parent that urged you to play with children whose families represented higher status in your community, even if you didn't like those children. Obviously, at work and in employment situations, this is a thing, and especially if your job is coalesced around sales and high-end CL fancy kinds of clients, because you need to get those folks near you, and the social climbing of being near fancy people so you can sell them stuff is a part of that. Social climbing is not always a means to an end. It's not just to get the fancy lifestyle or close the sale for a narcissistic person. It is the end. In the DSM, one of the diagnostic criteria for narcissistic personality disorder is, quote, believes that he or she is special and unique and can only be understood by or should associate with other special or high status people or institutions. So social climbing in and of itself is the thing, and it reflects the grandiosity and entitlement and covetousness and power-obsessive focus of all narcissistic personality styles. Their social climbingness can also explain the de-evaluation and the discard, especially if you were not the high-status partner that helped them climb the ladder. They may have met you, and then because they do tend to have a roving eye, they may in the course of your relationship or marriage meet, or observe someone who has greater social status. And whether or not they leave you for them, they may do things like compare you to them, compare your lifestyle to theirs. And yes, at least in the status department, you're always going to come up short. A narcissistic person will be chronically dissatisfied in their life with you if they have this idea that there is somehow more out there and you aren't bringing it. Love, compassion, respect, that's not enough. The same thing can happen in family systems where the narcissistic person may want to distance themselves from a family that may not have the high status they want. And this can be particularly pronounced if the narcissistic person managed to make it or succeed, really leapfrog away in terms especially financially from their family of origin, and they may want to distance themselves from the humble beginnings or a family that isn't so hip or sophisticated and just regular folks. A social climbing narcissistic person may even in some cases try to make over their family, perhaps getting them into new clothes or cars or the like. Not always. Typically, they'll just distance from them. Even if that family and their support was what got that narcissistic person to that place, their lack of empathy means they don't care. If the narcissistic person in a relationship with you manages to score a new high-status person, yes, there is a good chance that they will leave you for them. Always remember, for narcissistic people, relationships are superficial and exist for their regulation and for their needs. So someone coming in with the mother lode of the ultimate supply is very enticing and impossible for them to turn down. I cannot tell you in the years I've been doing this in practice how many times I've seen this happen, because the narcissistic person is like a damned fishing tooler. They have hundreds of lions in the water, always looking around to see who the biggest fish in the room is. So when that person who can climb them up the ladder does start to bite, and they can sort of snivel their way into there, they will. And it feels awful if this happens to you. When this happens, and keep in mind, social status may be more than just money or family status or something. It may just be that they want the status of someone younger and the social climb that comes from spinning around town with their shiny new thing. If this happens to you, when you are left for the social climb trade-out, it's an awful feeling. And many people will say this particular dynamic multiplied this grief, and it takes a minute and feels deeply unjust, especially as you witness the narcissistic person roll into a new life, which of course they have to broadcast on Instagram, because really for a narcissistic person, what's the point of social status if you can't make people envy you, which is another diagnostic criterion for narcissistic personality disorder, by the way. Narcissistic friends will do this too. They may blow you off, claim to be sick, and then you see the Instagram post of them at some high status event with other people. Narcissistic people don't always have the best frontal lobes, so they just have to post, even though they know you might see it after they lied to you. And they also lack empathy, so they wouldn't ever stop to think about how it would affect you, and they just assume you'll come back around, because friendships aren't monogamous. Narcissistic friends can pursue their social climbing in a different way, and may claim they have to do it for their career, for networking or whatever. But if the social climbing ladder friends engage with them, you will always be the backup plan if the high status new friends aren't available. So what does that mean for us? You got to always remember that any relationship with a narcissistic person was never and could never be deep. This confirms it, and I promise you this, it may come sniffing around and hoovering again if the rungs of the social climbing ladder break and they come crashing back down. Social climbing and social status are the same in terms of function as entitlement and grandiosity and arrogance and charm and charisma and all of the narcissistic defenses that protect a narcissistic person from internal insecurity and shame. And with the social climbing comes the contempt and snobbiest and a sort of looking down at you if they perceive you as someone who really can't help with their social status. The narcissistic person has a well-honed ability to scan a room and figure out who is worth it for them so they can go grab up supply and status, and they make up a line to them. They are also masterful at talking to a person and pretty quickly figuring out if that person they're talking to can do anything for them, and if they can't, again, quite quickly move on to their next target. But if you are on the receiving end of this kind of discard, it hurts. As much as I say it's not you, it's them, it doesn't take away the sting of feeling that you weren't enough. But enough what? For the narcissistic person, it may be about whether the new person's family has money, or they can go on some fancy-ass vacation, or they have social standing, or they have connections, or a beach house, or can make them help them make something happen like finance their business, or are simply young. The new partner is simply young and they can seem more viral or interesting by having a disproportionately young and attractive partner on their arm. These are superficial indicators, but it hurts nonetheless. And my holiday prayer for each and every one of you that has been through this kind of experience is that you get to see their social climbing experiment fall apart. May we all get to witness that. I got to say, I got that once when a particularly mean lady who had clearly climbed, as the story I was told goes. I didn't know, but that's what I was told about her. And who, because I was sort of the kind of dumpy, overweight mom, kind of looked at me like sort of smelly laundry and wouldn't give me the time of day when she first met me. In fact, I think she probably thought I was one of the servers at the event that I first met her at and not an attendee. Many, many years later, she reached out wanting help when her narcissistic husband, big surprise, left her for the much younger replacement set. She reached out wanting therapy. She said, "Oh, I remember you knew me way back when." I had already closed up my practice by then, so I was able to politely demur and say, "I'm sorry. I don't take new clients. I have empathy." So I felt that I did feel bad for her. I felt schadenfreude, of course, but I felt bad for her. But she was a cautionary tale of the dangers of social climbing. Get too high and the thud when you land is a lot more painful. And I had enough pride to say, yeah, no thanks. Always remember how the mighty fall. And there's a lot more oxygen here down at sea level. Anyhow, let those narcissistic people keep reaching for their castles in the sky. It gets them out of our lives and frees us up for healthier and more authentic relationships with healthier and more authentic people who like to keep their feet firmly planted on the ground in the macro. Even the few research studies I've found suggest that people who have narcissistic personalities do tend to make more money. It's not just luck. It's not life being unfair. There's just more to it than that. For people with narcissistic personalities, power, dominance, and ego are what get them up in the morning and keep them going all day. It's a singular motivation for them. And in most of the world, I hate to say it, most of the world, the quickest path forward to money is power and ego, and vice versa. The quickest power to power and ego is money. Now, healthy people don't derive their sole identity from money. Most of us need more of it, but we have limits on what we're willing to do for it. We may, most of us, not be willing to trade our souls, not betray people in a big way, to break rules or laws in a way to get it. We may even do jobs we don't love, or not want to work as hard as we do, but we do it to pay the bills. But a healthy person dares our identity from meaning, purpose, relationships, activities that we feel good about, doing things that represent what we stand for. And in that way, we have people out there who may not make lots of money, but they do tremendously meaningful work. They have loving friends and family and get their identity from who they are rather than what they are. But alas, those narcissists, their identities derive solely from their material egos, from a sense of power, from validation. And their greatest fear is that their shame will get activated. And they are afraid of the things that pluck their insecurities. And money makes one hell of a psychological fortress. And so they create these seemingly enviable lifestyles and protect themselves and whiz around in fast cars and live in tricked out homes. And may have fancy jobs, or at least pretend like they have fancy jobs. And they might have fancy shoes or fancy watches or fancy handbags. Wealthy narcissists will use that money to lord over other people. They use it to keep their partners around, to manipulate family members, and to control their employees. It really is a handy device for narcissists who derive a lot of identity from controlling other people and inducing envy in them. But to have it, they got to be able to make it. And here is where the narcissistic personality's entitlement, grandiosity, on-again, off-again relationship with ethics, their tendency to play it fast and loose with the truth, their lack of empathy, and little regard for how their choices affect other people. That's how they make it. People higher in narcissism are more competitive, more ambitious, more concerned with winning, more extroverted, more desirous of leadership. So when you put all of that together and shake it all up, and given that money is the ultimate narcissistic supply, you have in a narcissist a person who is willing to do whatever it takes to make money. They will burn bridges, hurt colleagues, betray friends and family, lie, cheat, ignore rules, rationalize shady choices, and power to the front of the line. In the United States, at least, we tend to forgive people who broke the rules to get to the top as long as they get to the top. Now, sadly, we are a culture that reveres very wealthy people. Now listen, I know that not all people with money are bad people, Some people have the good luck of inheriting it and they're aware of their blessings and may even do some really good things with it. Some people legit earn their money and they're good people. Some people win it, but unfortunately, the way money is set up in our culture, a lot of people who have a lot of it don't play by the rules. The willingness within the narcissistic personality to skirt the rules and feel entitled to break those rules can often set them up to do quite well in business or in other fields. For many of us, doing the right thing means that we do leave money on the table. We play by the rules. We pay our taxes. We help other people out. That's not exactly a fast track to getting rich or perhaps even saving a nest egg. And it's not just money. In some fields, people can really succeed and become the boss, even if they don't make a lot of money. Some fields just don't pay a lot, but they may get promotions. They might get the bigger title, and those promotions and title can come with power. I'm always struck by how many people are more than qualified to be the leader, but are pretty content with what they're doing, don't feel that they need the adulation or the power or frankly the headaches. I've seen it happen more times than I can count. Sort of people getting ahead on the basis of Machiavellianism, that sort of political savvy, but not necessarily on the basis of skill or ability. Again, a narcissistic drive to win and get narcissistic supply can lead to a completely blind pursuit to succeed and typically make money. Listen, ambition is not a bad thing. I think it's wonderful to have goals, to pursue them passionately, and to see them through. That's all good. What's not good? It's consistently harming other people in their pursuit and feeling entitled to do what you need to get ahead, to get ahead and hurt anyone in the process. And yet the pillars of the narcissistic personality are set up to do just this. And from there we get the unempathic bosses, the billionaires and robber barons that have made this world a big fat mess. Now, sadly, many people really get hurt by this. So let's just say even we're talking about trying to find a mentor. What do we look for in a mentor, right? We look for a person who has succeeded in their field. It isn't often that a person chooses their mentor on the basis of saying, hey, this person has great work-life balance and they've slowed their career down and they make a lot of compromises and they play really nice. I've actually chosen my mentors on this basis, like really chosen some sweet people, smartest thing I've ever done. And in this way, though, what gets problematic is a lot of people do choose narcissists to be their mentors. They can really be harmful and destructive mentors because you wanted someone at the top of your game to be your mentor. It sucks because money is such a source of power in this world, and it is a tool that allows many people with narcissistic personalities to get away with just about anything. That impunity can continue to enable these patterns in the very people that many other people are trying to emulate, which again is the mess we're in our world right now. Research has consistently shown that people who are narcissistic, research has shown that narcissism is overrepresented in CEOs, celebrities, athletes, and people who pursue leadership are actually more likely to have narcissistic traits than those who don't. Billionaires are more likely to have these qualities, as are politicians. And we see narcissism in doctors, lawyers, even religious leaders, people who are supposed to be shepherding their flock, priests, pastors, rabbis, you name it. Many people think, I can't be right. Really? Narcissism helps people succeed. Yeah, it does. I remember years ago, an undergraduate in one of my classes approached me after class after I'd actually taught part of a unit on narcissism. At the time, he was taking night classes as he pursued a career by day, and he was a hardworking guy. And he said, Doc, after hearing you talk about narcissism today, it sure seems like it would help my career. Can I come to your office hours or set up a meeting with you so you can teach me? I smiled for a moment, thinking it could be an interesting side hustle for me, how to teach people to channel their inner narcissists and become rich. But nah, he seems sort of like a sweet kid, and I don't know. They never had him in a class again. So who knows if he's ever going to achieve the success he wanted. I was reminded, though, that in my career at least, I would rather protect people from patterns such as narcissism, or help them heal, rather than to practice the dark art of channeling their narcissism. So for all of you out there who are saying, it seems like the narcissists are all making a lot of money, you're probably right. The qualities associated with narcissism, sadly, can often be associated with egoentrism, the willingness to put one's needs first and making sure that they get not only the biggest piece of the pie, but they take that biggest piece of the pie out of the middle. And that's why, and then you got to ask yourself, what are the trade-offs you'd be willing to make for that? You might think you can, but then that authentic part of you kicks in and says, nah, I can't do this. And if it means I make a little bit less, at least maybe, I hope I'll sleep a little bit better at night. And unfortunately for the narcissists who do get financially successful, that financial success becomes one more tool with which they can bully and control other people. And the other risky bit is because many times people choose partners on the basis of their financial or career success. It's in this way that more than a few people have gotten roped into marriages or long-term relationships with narcissists who've made a lot of money. And then it can yield, you start to realize at the time it might seem nice to have all that money and advantage and gifts and lovely places to live. Over time, you'd be like, listen, I'd rather live in a box than be living with this person anymore. And if you grew up with a financially successful narcissist, you could easily see how toxic that money would become in the family system. It would become a way of showing love. It would be withheld as a way to punish. And the narcissist at the core of it, the one with all the money, really is able to run that family from a bully pulpit, using the money as, in essence, a bunch of strings to pull the puppets that they call the people in their family. So if you have any thoughts on that, why narcissists are financially successful, I'm sure I missed some points. Drop them in the comments. Would love to hear your thoughts on this because I'm sure you've seen this trend too. Thanks again.